Hey, so yesterday I shared a picture of our wellness dashboard that I created, and I got some questions about how I put it together. So I'm gonna go through that now. So this is the wellness dashboard, at least the front page of it, and it's basically a snapshot of some wellness data for a team. And um, I basically we have these keys right here. So soreness, fatigue, mood, sleep quality, stress level. So those are all out of a 5. So I can see kind of where the team is at a quick shot look and kind of see where they are right now, over time, kind of where they've been. Um, this is perceived exertion. That's out of 10, and workout time is how much they worked out, obviously. And so these are all averages over 14 days. And so we can kind of look at this real quick and kind of see what's the health of the team. I've got the index warning. The index is basically ignoring soreness and adding fatigue, mood, sleep quality, and stress level together. So a maximum score of 20. So we can look and say, okay, on average, our index is 14. And so we can kind of monitor that and see where the general health of our team is. We can also look and say, okay, here are the people that whose numbers are low. So we've got an 8 and a 9 and a 10. And so looking at those and saying, okay, those index scores are real low. Do we need to reach it? Is this someone we already know about, or is this something new that we need to reach out and find out what the deal is and see how we can help them succeed and get better? The other important thing with all this is that none of this data is helpful if people aren't filling it out. And so there's at a quick glance we can see what our participation is. And so by default, here's the people whose participation is less than 50%. And so basically in the last 14 days, these people have filled out less than 7 times. And so we can look and say, okay, wait, why are these people not filling this out? And we can maybe that's a problem in itself that we need to address and look into, or maybe we just need to encourage these people to fill it out every day. And so we can see on the graph, obviously, it's kind of the same type of information, is that ideally, I think there's 30 something people on this list, and ideally we would want this to be just a straight line, so everyone's filling it out every day. But looking at this, we can see that it's kind of all over the map. So how do we do this? How do we get all this data? How do we collect it, and how do we get it to a point where we can evaluate it? And so everything that we've done is all through Google, and we're a Google campus, and that makes things a little bit easier. But the first thing that we did really is collecting the data, and we collect the data through a Google form. And so we have a basic Google form that we've created and put together. It doesn't ask a lot of information. Like I said, we want people to fill this out every day. In order for people to do that, it needs to be easy and quick and not time consuming. And so there's some simple questions, and there's a couple other questions where if there's some issues, we can dig a little deeper, but we don't want to dig too deep. So the other thing we're not doing, as I mentioned, we're a Google campus. I'm not asking for name. So I've set this form up so that it collects email addresses. So they need to be logged in, and if they're logged in, they click on the link, then they don't have to put their name in. They just start filling it out. That's enough information that we can identify them after the fact. And so there's our basic form, and obviously we're asking for fatigue, sleep quality, general muscle soreness. Those are all 1 through 5, and after muscle soreness. We ask for body parts. So, for example, if they've got some muscle soreness, they can put that, what part of their body is sore. So we can kind of dig into that if we need to. Stress level and mood, same thing. 1 through 5. Activity description and length of workout. That's basically saying, what did you do today? What was your workout, and how long did it last? And then perceived exertion is, how hard do you think that was? And so if we look at that, this is what it is from their perspective, and it's super easy to just real quick. I'm feeling fresh, restful, feeling great. Stress level, well, all right. Mood's okay. Went for a walk today, and for 60 minutes, and it was moderate. And submit. So boom, just like that, super easy. We've collected that data. Now, where does that data go? So by default, when you use a Google form, it shows up in this responses section. And you can see the couple times I've filled this out, testing it. The way the data is presented and what we're looking for, especially as more people start filling it out multiple times, it's just not very helpful. It's not presented in a way that we can really glean much information from it. So what we're going to do then is we're going to make sure that data goes into a Google Sheets. And so you can see we've got it in Google Sheets. That's where it's set to go to Google Sheets. And so we have this Google Sheet that collects all this data. And so this is some anonymized data that we've collected. And once all the data is in this Google Sheet from that form, then we can start manipulating it, looking at it different ways, and seeing what we can collect from that data. We tested this earlier in the summer, and then kind of once we got some data in there, then we could kind of maneuver around and say, okay, these are the kinds of things we want to pull out of this data. And so one of the things that I've got set up is name. As I said before, we're not asking for name. We're just collecting the email address when they log in. And so what I have is an array formula that basically looks up this email address name. And so I have this email list tab, and I'll explain why it's called email list in a minute. But I have all the emails and then the names right there next to them. And so what this formula does is it looks at that email address, and through a VLOOKUP, it says, okay, this email address is associated with this name. And so then we can populate that name. And because it's done through an array formula, it's all automated. So, this is the one that I just did, you can see. And as you enter, as a Google form is submitted, it gets populated, and then this field is automatically calculated. And that's the same thing over that I did with date and month and week. And now those are there because when I first started putting this all together, I wasn't using Google Data Studio. I was using just pivot tables in new sheets, and formatting these dates in this way helped me do that. And some of that I use in Data Studio, but that's more, it's basically just taking that timestamp and manipulating it in a way that when we're looking at the data, it makes it easier to look at. So once all the data is in there, what do we do? How do we access that? How do we look at it? And so that's where we come into Google Data Studio. And so let's start from scratch. And if I just click a blank report, and the first thing it's going to ask you is, where's this data coming from? What data do you want to analyze? And we're going to say sheets, and I want to use the test data. Oh, no, don't need to open that. The test data, the data page. And yes, I know that. And so let's change this. No, let's change some styles just so it looks fancier. And let's delete that by default. All right. So the first thing we can do is maybe add a graph. And so we'll just click Add Chart, and we'll do this thing over time. We'll go right there. And the first thing it's going to do is going to include record count. And that's really, in this case, that's not data that's actually helpful. It's just the number of people who have filled out the form on each day. So let's say I want fatigue and muscle soreness and mood and sleep quality and stress level. Let's get rid of record count. And by default, it's going to sum those values, but that's not valuable information unless we have the same number of people filling it out. So we're going to change that to average. For each one of those, we'll change it to average. 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 Okay. And so now we've got our averages. And this graph looks a little funky because this was back in June. We did a little test sample with just a small number of people to kind of get some data and see how it worked. And then we kind of didn't do anything, and then we picked up again in September. So that's why this looks goofy. But you can see that it's pretty easy to get data in a presentable way. We can, you saw the little scorecards. We can click there, and again, record count is not valuable. So let's just say fatigue and not some, average. So really easy to kind of build out some dashboards and some looks at some of this data that we can kind of tease out and filter and look a little deeper. So let's go back and let me open the demo one again. So we talked about this one. And so you can have multiple pages and you can kind of dig into those pages. Here we go. This is workout averages by day. And so perceived exertion. This might be valuable for a coach who, as a coach, I prescribe this workout and I say, okay, Mondays and Tuesdays should be an easy day. And then I look at the chart and people are saying that it's hard. And so then I can reevaluate. And there's obviously some disconnect between me as a coach, what I think is going to be easy or hard, and what an athlete thinks are going to be easy and hard. And so in these particular graphs, the blue is average exertion, what the average person felt like that particular workout was. Then max, so in this particular case, it's 9. So at least one person thought that was a 9 on the exertion scale, so really hard. And a minimum, which in this case is 0. The minimum in this case, that is not super valuable, because especially if you have athletes who aren't on the same schedule, so if everyone's doing the same workout, then that's great. But if you have some people who are filling out the form and entering data that maybe they're injured or maybe they're doing different workouts, then that can kind of skew some of that. So this is a 14-day snapshot, and this particular page is set to filter by name. So by default, I see everyone, but I can click on name, and let's just look at Vincent. So I can Vincent only, and so now I can see just one person's time or one person's data, and so I can look at this one person and see kind of where they are and where they've been going. So as we talked about before, some of the warnings and looking at people who might be struggling a little bit, we could then go into them particular their specific data and say, okay, where are we trending? Are they trending back up? Are they trending back down? What's this one person doing? And then here's another warning with just some more data. On the front page, it was just the index, but now we can actually look and see where their issues are. And so, we could look and say, okay, they're 4s. This is a good example right here. So he's kind of a 4. That sleep quality's good, mood's good, fatigue. So he's really fatigued. So there's an issue right there, and stress level is a little stressed. So this is just looking at those warnings and kind of digging a little bit deeper into the data and seeing what we can glean from there. Obviously most of these people are pretty consistent in that 3, 4, so it's some 2s. So fatigue and stress levels. So this person's fatigued and stressed. But for the most part, these people are all pretty consistent across the board. But this would be a way to kind of tease out like maybe one issue. Maybe they're in general they're fine, but they're just getting terrible sleep, or in general they're fine, but they're just stressed. So yeah, and so you can add pages and filter and dig deep. So it's super quick to get something started. Once you're kind of delving into it, some of it can get a little tricky as to in terms of filtering and defining what you want to see and setting all that up. But it's pretty easy to get started, and it's real easy to in terms of the data, in terms of what you're doing, it's really easy compared to how it would be if you wanted to present this in any other mechanism. So I hope that helps.